Welcome everyone. In this video, we will take a look at academic integrity, and in particular, academic integrity here at Fernbank Science Center. So as we take a look at academic integrity, the first thing we need to ask is, what is integrity? And I want you to pause for a moment and think of someone you know who has integrity. What does that person do that shows integrity? What are they like that shows integrity? What do they not do? And then what do you think motivates them to have integrity? So hopefully thinking of that person gives you a little bit of an idea of what integrity is. I feel like we all have a gut understanding of what integrity is, but if we were going to define it, integrity is doing what's right even when it is difficult and no one is watching. And when we discuss this with students, they usually bring up two things, that integrity involves a commitment to honesty and a commitment to treating others well, and that it usually stems not from external reward, but from an internal belief that honesty and treating others well are important. Okay, so that's what integrity is. What then is academic integrity? A lot of times I think we can hide behind this word academic integrity. What it really means is honesty in your schoolwork. And when you do not have academic integrity, it typically means that you are lying, cheating, or stealing in some way in your schoolwork, which sounds pretty severe, but that is what you're doing. And I think if you have to own those harsh words of lie, cheat, and steal instead of academic dishonesty, then you're less likely to do it if you really face up to what not having academic integrity means. So why does academic integrity matter in education? Academic integrity impacts your own learning. If you're not being honest about what you know, then you're not going to learn as much. It impacts your relationship with your teachers. It impacts your relationship with your classmates as well. If you do well because you cheated and your classmates do not because they haven't cheated, they may end up resenting you. It impacts your relationship with yourself. It impacts your grades. It impacts your academic record, and your academic record does get used when you are applying for colleges. So cheating even in 9th grade can impact your admission to college. And then it also impacts your teachers and your classmates. We mentioned this a little bit with your classmates, but teachers, I can tell you that as a teacher, one of the most frustrating things I ever deal with is students cheating. It makes me deeply angry because I feel betrayed and lied to. And like the student isn't giving their full effort, and it does damage my relationship with the student even if I don't want it to. Integrity also matters a lot in science, which is why we really hold academic integrity to be a very high value here at the Fernbank Science Center. So why does integrity matter in science? Science need to receive credit for their work. In this classic example, when we think of the people who discovered DNA, we think of Watson and Crick. But many of you may know that they actually stole the photographs taken by Rosalind Franklin. They were kind of passed on by her boss, Wilkins. And what ended up happening is Watson and Crick and Wilkins got a Nobel Prize for discovering the structure of DNA, even though Rosalind Franklin was the one that clued them into the double helix. And Rosalind Franklin died early because of the radiation exposure from taking all the x-rays that were needed to see that DNA structure. And Nobel Prizes aren't awarded after someone dies. And so they stole the credit for her work and got high recognition, and she really got nothing. And so integrity matters in science because we want to know who actually did the work. However, it also matters because a lot is on the line in science, particularly when we're talking about medical science. The man in this picture was the head of the equivalent of China's FDA, and he took bribes to say that medicines were safe, and he approved them, even though they weren't and had side effects. And he was actually tried and found guilty and sentenced to death in China because of what he did. And it's not just that he was sentenced to death. If you think about it, if you lie about whether or not a medicine has side effects, the people that take it could be in real danger. And so integrity matters a lot in science because a lot is riding on the facts that science is generating. And then another way that it matters, and that I think we're seeing a lot these days, is the spread of misinformation can be really harmful especially in our age where we have a ton of information floating around all the time. We're seeing this now with coronavirus, where studies are being written, like with hydroxychloroquine, and then retracted, or studies aren't done properly. And again, it can harm people, but also it can lead to a societal belief that something is true when it is not, which then does greater damage. So integrity really matters in science, which is why we hold it to be very valuable here in the STT program. So then why does academic integrity matter to you? So when you are academically dishonest, you are lying by telling yourself, your teachers, your parents, and everyone else that you know something you don't, and you have done work that you didn't do. You're also stealing by taking credit for someone else's hard work, whether you know that person and have copied off of them in class, or you don't know that person and you just copied and pasted from the internet. You are stealing someone else's work. And then you are also cheating yourself out of the opportunity to learn, and you are cheating by breaking the rules. And so when you are academically dishonest, like we said, you are lying and stealing and cheating. And having to call it those harsh words, again, makes you less likely to do it than just calling it an academic integrity issue. So a note about academic integrity during digital learning. I know that we're all learning at home right now, and academic integrity is a lot harder to maintain when you are not in the classroom and when you are digital all the time. You do not have a teacher sitting there watching what you're doing in class. You do not have as much of an opportunity to handwrite things. The temptation, I will say, is very great because it's so much easier to cheat during digital learning. Copy paste is easier, sharing answers is easier, looking up answers during a test is easier. So the temptation is greater, which means that you as students need to step up and really embrace that inner ethic of integrity instead of just taking the easy way out. You will, like I said, you will learn a lot more if you do your own work. So please be honest during digital learning. Know that the temptation is there and think about what you need to do yourself to minimize that temptation to cheat while you're at home. Okay, so what are our academic integrity expectations here in STT? Those expectations are honesty, how we work with other students, how we use resources, plagiarism, and lab work. So honesty, this one really boils down to being honest with your teachers. Some of that may be reasons why you're absent, okay? Please be honest about those reasons. Please also be honest about why, for example, you do not have work to turn in. It's better to be honest. Your teachers will appreciate that more, and I can still remember from AP US History in high school. I don't remember much from that class, but I do remember lying about why I didn't have my homework. And that was a long time ago. I mentioned that just to provide an illustration for how academic dishonesty can stick with you for decades, even after you've committed it, and that it really does impact you yourself and how you see yourself. Academic integrity also applies to working with other students. And with this, please only submit work that you yourself have done. This means you need to think for yourself. Don't text or message your classmate and ask what they are thinking unless you are told to work in groups. Do not copy answers or work from other students, and don't offer to let someone else copy. If this happens, both the copier and the person who was copied from will receive a 0. Okay. To those of you who are tempted to let other people copy from you, I was tempted to do that in high school, and I let people do that, hoping that they would be my friends. No, they just used me for my work. So do not let other people copy from you. It does not benefit you in the long run, and it doesn't benefit them either because they are not learning. So don't copy answers or work. There is no copying, sharing, or stealing answers for tests, quizzes, or any other assignment. And again, this is particularly important during digital learning. You may not text or chat or use the phone to share answers during class or outside of class. And then last but not least, all of your work must be in your own words, even if you're working in a group, unless the teacher says you can have things in the same words or you all submit one document. Everything must be in your own words. Okay. Using resources. Only use the specified resources for your project. If your teacher tells you you can't use the internet, then don't use the internet. Okay. If your teacher tells you not to use certain books, then don't use those books. Only use what they tell you to use. Do not use notes, books, the internet, or anything else for tests and quizzes unless your instructor tells you otherwise for that assignment, okay, or for that quiz. You'll run into a variety of different policies on test taking online here in STT. Some people will say not to use other resources. Some people will let you. You need to be mindful of what those teachers say and don't use anything they say that you can't. Now, you may have an open notes test. However, let's be clear, the internet is not part of your notes or your textbook, okay? So if you are told not to use the internet, but you can use your notes, then don't use the internet. Do not just Google your answers. I can tell you that when you do this, you will usually get the wrong answer just by Googling, and it's really easy to plagiarize when you just Google, so don't do it. All right, moving on to plagiarism. So plagiarism in a nutshell is not giving appropriate credit to the true author or creator for their words or ideas or music or art. Whatever it is, you're not giving credit to the person who created it. So when I started doing this presentation, if I looked up on YouTube plagiarism, you got all kinds of like academic videos. And then in fall 2016, what you started to see on YouTube instead, when you looked up the word plagiarism, was Melania Trump's speech. Now, I'm not saying that to make a political point. I'm saying that to say that when you plagiarize, which we know that she copied Michelle Obama's speech and word for word in many places. And so I say all of that to note that when you plagiarize, that becomes your reputation. And she became, at least for a couple years, kind of the face of plagiarism when you looked it up on YouTube, right? In a different arena, another example is Marvin Gaye and Pharrell Williams and Robin Thicke. The estate of Marvin Gaye actually sued Pharrell Williams and Robin Thicke for sampling some of his music without giving him credit. And the most recent settlement was for Pharrell Williams and Robin Thicke to pay the estate of Marvin Gaye over $7 million in damages for sampling his work without giving him credit. So another kind of plagiarism in the social spotlight that we see. So what does plagiarism include? Plagiarism includes copying a sentence or a short phrase word for word without citing it as a quotation. However, it also includes using or presenting any information or idea, even if it's in your own words, that wasn't your own original thought, without giving credit to the person who wrote it or came up with it. Now, this can often be a sticking point for students, but if you didn't come up with the idea or that fact, then you've got to cite it, okay? Using a picture or a graph without citing where it came from, and not citing your references. All of those constitute plagiarism. Right. How to avoid plagiarism? Cite your sources. Anything word for word must be in quotes. You need to put everything in your own words, and do not just copy and paste. We will go over these more in our research and writing and science video, but just to give you an overview that there are ways to avoid plagiarism and you need to do them. In thinking about avoiding plagiarism, the simple phrase to remember is create or credit. Either you create it or you give credit to someone else. Those are the two choices. There's no in between. If it's in your own words, do you still need to cite it? The answer is yes, you do. What if you're just stating a general idea or a fact? Okay, now in science, this can get a little tricky. If you're saying something like the sky is blue, you don't need to cite it, okay? The mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, you probably don't need to cite it. However, if you cite something more in depth, like the reason why the sky is blue, and you have looked that up, then you do need to cite that, okay? But doesn't this mean your work will be full of citations and have a long bibliography? Yes, and that's a good thing. And lastly is lab work. In lab work, you need to be honest about your results and about your hypothesis. So let's say you make a hypothesis and then you do your experiment and your results don't match your hypothesis. Well, you don't go back and change your hypothesis and you don't change your results. You let both of them stand and then explain why your results didn't match your hypothesis. We talked about earlier why in science fabricating your results can lead to serious damage, but also hypotheses are about being honest. One of the things that I was taught in grad school is that you test your hypothesis. You don't love your hypothesis. It's okay to have a wrong hypothesis. Scientists have wrong hypotheses all the time. That's why we make them, so we can test them. And so it's okay to have a wrong hypothesis. You just got to be honest about your hypothesis and your results. All right, so those are our expectations. What are the consequences for academic dishonesty here in STT? With the first offense, your assignment receives a 0. You may or may not be given extra work by your teacher to regain credit, and your parents are called. Okay. If you do it again, then the assignment receives a 0 again. You may not do extra work to make it up. Your parents are called, and your cheating violation goes on your permanent record. For your third offense, the student is referred to their home school for disciplinary action. The assignment receives a 0. We call your parents, and it goes on your permanent record, okay? Now, if it's something really serious, like cheating on a test, we will jump straight to the third offense because we do consider cheating on a test to be a very serious matter. Okay? So that is the consequences for academic dishonesty. The next step is to sign the pledge saying that you have seen and understood this presentation and you agree to uphold our academic integrity policy. Thank you for watching this video on academic integrity. We wish you the best in your semester, and we challenge you to have a high level of integrity in your work this semester.